Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 227 based on novel. Before starting the video, special thanks to Roller Sabrine for super thanks. So let's start. Following the appearance of each explosion, there would be an expert from the Yaro clan exploding the Do Chi within his body and blast himself into pieces. In the face of such a wild and violent energy attack, even one's soul would not remain. Xiao Yang's group unleashed their speed to their limit as they crazily rushed towards the area where the explosions were most centralized. The seal at that spot had already been blasted apart. It would no longer be difficult to tear open the space. Those experts from the various sects were also closely following behind Xiao Yang. They understood that it was impossible for them to successfully escape alive by relying on their own strength in such a chaotic period. However, the Han clan's aim was to eliminate all the living creatures within the Yaro clan. It was naturally impossible for them to simply allow Xiao Yang and the others to leave. While Xiao Yang's group traveled, the Tuling creatures covering the entire area as well as the experts from the Han clan had immediately changed their target. They rushed and surrounded Xiao Yang's group from all directions. Xiao Yang's expression turned cold after seeing the figures, which were rushing over from all directions. He was just about to attack when Old Man Shen Nong from behind threw the medicinal herb's walking stick in his hand. Immediately, a green sea of flame spread rapidly. It emitted some swish sound as countless of towering trees appeared. Those huge trees with flames surrounding them were like vines that entwined around the figures, which were hurrying over. Xiao Yang sighed in relief as Old Man Shen Nong attacked. This caused the speed of Yaro Tian's group to soar once again. Nihility, sir, stop Xiao Yang. That brat also has a Tushi ancient god jade in his hand. Hun Huzi, who was being entangled with Elder Wanhua and a few others, hurriedly cried out after seeing Xiao Yang's group charging across the sky and was becoming increasingly closer to that particular space. Humph, do you think that I can make many copies of myself? The Nihility devouring flame snorted coldly after hearing Hun Huzi's cry. His voice appeared to be filled with some displeasure. Hun Huzi was quiet after hearing this. He smiled in embarrassment. The Nihility devouring flame might be the most powerful person present, but he not only needed to split his attention to stabilize the spatial seal, but he had also suffered an injury from the soul fragment of Yaro Di during the big battle earlier. Additionally, he had currently turned into countless of tunneling. Where would he find the strength to split his focus? Leave it to me. Hun Jing, I'll leave this old ghost Yaro Dan to you. Trying to block the both of us with just your strength alone is nothing but fantasy. One of the 4 demon saints of the Han clan from a battlefield in the sky mockingly glanced at Yaro Dan, who was in a somewhat crazy state, in front of him. His body flashed and an afterimage appeared. After which, he escaped from the fight and directly rushed towards the spot where Xiao Yang's group was like an old eagle. Xiao Yang. This name is not unfamiliar to me. There has been many rumors about you within the Han clan. If it is not because the clan is preparing our plan, I would have already come out and meet you. You are the only person in many years who had been able to cause my Han clan to suffer losses time and time again. Han Yang's speed was extremely terrifying. Within a couple of breaths' time, he had appeared in front of Xiao Yang's group and laughed coldly. Xiao Yang's expression sunk as he looked at another tiger appearing to block their path. The strength of this Han Yang was extremely terrifying. Based on his senses, this fellow had likely reached the advanced 7-star Doshun class. He was much stronger than even Yaro Dan. Life Spirit Flame. Old Man Shen Nong from behind also had a change in expression because of the appearance of Han Yang. Soon after, he immediately attacked. The large sea of green flame gathered and turned into a huge fire beast with 4 limbs. After which, it charged violently at the latter. Life Spirit Flame. Haha, I am also quite interested in it. After capturing you this time around, this Life Spirit Flame will belong to me. Han Yang laughed faintly as he faced the sharp attack by that huge beast. His large hand was suddenly clenched. Monstrous Do Chi gathered and directly formed a huge palm, which slammed onto the large beast. A frightening force actually scattered the fire beast with a strike. The force was the wind did not diminish as it grabbed towards Xiao Yang's group. The combat strength of this Life Spirit Flame is indeed insufficient. Old Man Shen Nong involuntarily laughed bitterly after seeing that the attack by the Life Spirit Flame was useless. He looked at the huge palm that fell from the sky and hurriedly increased his speed. The speed of Xiao Yang's group soared as the huge palm grabbed at them. They narrowly dodged it. However, some of those behind them were unlucky. In the face of the huge claw, even the 1-star peak Do Sheng experts present amongst them had collapsed under the palm and explode into a cluster of blood fog. Xiao Yang did not have the time to be bothered about the many miserable cries emitted from behind him. His eyes stared intently at Han Yang in front of him. The position of this person was coincidentally where the spatial seal had been shattered. In other words, if they wanted to tear open a spatial crack, they must defeat this old fellow. However, Trying to defeat a top expert who had reached the advanced 7-star Doshun class posed quite a difficulty to the current Xiao Yang. Northern King. Xiao Yang's eyes flickered. He threw Yaro Tian, whom he had held in his hand, towards Yaro Laro. A thought immediately passed through his mind. That statue-like Northern King, who had been following behind him, unhesitatingly turned into a ray of black light that charged forward. A wind containing a frightening strength directly covered Hun Yang. Huh! Is this a puppet? A surprise flashed across Hun Yang's eyes as he faced the unusually sharp attack from the Northern King. Even he had seldom seen such a powerful puppet which did not show any signs of being unfamiliar with combat. Its physical body might be strong, but a puppet is ultimately a puppet. Although Hun Yang was surprised, he did not withdraw even a little. Monstrous Do Chi surged. He waved his hand and the Do Chi changed into a 1,000 feet large Do Chi hand, which easily received the Northern King's sharp attack. Occasionally wind churned as he struck his palm forward. The vast and mighty Do Chi forced back the Northern King. Its incomparably hard body revealed some half-inch deep scars. Given the strength of the Northern King, it was a little too difficult for it to fight against an expert at the advanced 7-star Doshun class. Little Yi. Xiao Yang cried out while the Northern King was stopping Hun Yang with all its strength. Little Yi quickly rose from Xiao Yang's body. Finally, it completely merged with Xiao Yang's soul. Purifying demonic lotus flame came erupted from Xiao Yang's body in all directions following the merger. His body had once again turned crystal clear. Even the bones and internal organs in his body had been covered by a pink crystal layer. Extermination Fire Body. Xiao Yang had unleashed his strongest attack of his the moment he began fighting. He understood that an ordinary attack was completely useless against such an expert. Extermination Fire Lotus. Xiao Yang suddenly clenched his hand after the fire body was formed. 6 different colored heavenly flame formed a spiraling shape in his palm. After which, they mixed with each other. Within a short moment, it had formed a fire lotus with 5 different colored. An extermination-like aura spread the moment the fire lotus was formed. Go! Xiao Yang's arm shook the moment the fire lotus was formed. The extermination fire lotus was accompanied by a brilliant fire tail as it shot out with lightning speed. Finally, it exploded a short distance from Hun Yang. Bang! An earth-shaking energy explosion resounded over the place. A firestorm, which was filled with an exterminating force, raged wildly. Any Tuling that was within 1,000 feet from the storm would be struck by the waves. Their bodies would immediately turn into black blood, which vaporized under the high temperature. Humph, you do have some ability. However, if this is your trump card, you should just obediently hand over the Tu-Shi ancient god jade in your hands. I can still allow you to die peacefully. The firestorm swept over the sky. However, that icy cold voice of Hun Yang continued to be slowly emitted from within the storm. Everyone could see a monstrous black vapor surging from the middle of the firestorm. It actually managed to block the raging firestorm. Hun Yang stepped on the empty air at the middle of the black vapor. He took a step forward at a time. His clothes fluttered in the absence of any wind while he wore a dark and dense expression. Xiao Yang's expression changed slightly after seeing the unhurt Hun Yang. This was the first time that he had used the extermination fire lotus while unleashing the extermination fire body. He did not expect that he was still unable to seriously damage Hun Yang in spite of this. The strength of an advanced 7-star Doshun was indeed extremely terrifying. The aura of that old man is a little unsteady. It looks like that attack of yours from earlier has still managed to hurt him. However, it is still insufficient to seriously injure him. Old man Shen Nong spoke with a grave expression. Xiao Yang, we must escape as soon as possible. Otherwise, if those experts from the Yaro clan were to be completely exterminated, we will also have difficulty escaping this place. Yaro Laro cried out in a deep voice. Xiao Yang nodded quietly. His eyes looked at Hun Yang, who was wearing a cold smile on his dense face. He suddenly exhaled and spoke in a deep voice. Elder Shen Nong, Yaro Tian, lend me the heavenly flames within your body. Old man Shen Nong and Yaro Tine were startled upon hearing this. However, they did not have time to ask questions at this moment. The former was open-minded. He waved his hand and the medicinal ingredient walking stick in his hand landed in Xiao Yang's hands. Yaro Tian hesitated for a moment before quickly spitting out a cluster of dark brown flame. The flame vaguely agglomerated into a turtle shape. This was naturally the heavenly flame ranked 13th on the heavenly flame ranking, the turtle spiritual earth flame. Xiao Yang held the walking stick with one hand and grabbed the turtle spiritual earth flame with the other. His crystal clear body vaguely emitted a mysterious luster. Under this condition, both Little Yi and him had been completely merged together. From a certain point of view, he was currently in possession of the constitution of a heavenly flame spirit. As long as their owners do not resist, he would be able to use the heavenly flames that he had never refined before. However, their strength would naturally be a little weaker as compared to those that he had refined. At this moment, however, there was no time for him to think of this. Xiao Yang alone possessed 6 types of heavenly flames. If these 2 types of heavenly flames were to be added, the fire lotus that was formed would be an unprecedented fire lotus formed by 8 types of heavenly flame. Its might would definitely be extremely terrifying. The life spirit flame and the turtle spiritual earth flame were quickly turned into 2 clusters of different colored flames in Xiao Yang's hands. There was a little resistance being vaguely emitted. After all, the 2 types of heavenly flames already had their respective owners. Even though their owners did not resist, their instincts would still pose some resistance. Moreover, this was the case despite Xiao Yang having transformed into possessing a heavenly flame constitution. If an ordinary person was to hold them, it was likely that they would have already exploded instead of acting in such a docile manner. Xiao Yang frowned slightly as he detected the slight resistance being emitted from the 2 clusters of essence flames. He flicked his finger. A wisp of pink flame was extended from his finger. After which, it wrapped the 2 clusters of essence heavenly flames. Immediately, the fire glow around the 2 clusters of heavenly flames showed a slight sign of stiffening. Even though these 2 heavenly flames did not possess any intelligence, they were still being frightened to the point of not daring to move in the face of the frightening purifying demonic lotus flames purifying strength. Xiao Yang sighed in relief within his heart after seeing the 2 clusters of essence heavenly flames becoming quiet. He curled his hand and 6 flames were once again formed. Xiao Yang flicked his finger while these 6 flames were slowly merging. The life spirit flame and turtle spiritual earth flame were shot into them. The flame, which was quietly being gathered, emitted a low and deep sound following the entry of these 2 heavenly flames. Waves after waves of frightening energy wildly whistled from within. It actually showed a vague sign of being about to explode. Xiao Yang's expression became a little grave as he sensed the change within the flame. Even though he currently possessed the heavenly flame spirit constitution of Little Yi, he was indeed a little too unfamiliar with these 2 heavenly flames. There was naturally some difficulty in merging them. However, this did not cause Xiao Yang to panic. His perfect heavenly state spiritual strength poured into the flame like floodwater. Immediately, the wild and violent nature within became like a large tank of cold water being added to boiling water. It immediately became quiet. Immediately, the wild violence scattered. The fire once again agglomerated under Xiao Yang's control. At the same time, the do qi within Xiao Yang's body continuously surged into the flame like floodwater. The addition of 2 types of heavenly flames had increased Xiao Yang's do qi exhaustion many times over. An exhaustion of that extent was something that even the current Xiao Yang had difficulty supporting. With an increasing amount of do qi being poured into the flame, layers after layers of seemingly real ripples began to be formed within it. A partial lotus shape had vaguely appeared with the flame. A kind of fluctuation that frightened even Xiao Yang quietly spread from it. The might of an angry Buddha lotus flame being formed from 8 types of heavenly flames could really be described as having the ability to destroy the world. Han Yang, who had been held back by the fearless Northern King, had also detected the frightening fluctuation as it spread. His expression finally experienced a change as he looked at Xiao Yang in a grave manner. Those eyes of his were focused on the 8-colored flame on Xiao Yang's hands. His eyes involuntarily twitched. Even he could sense a danger from that force. This brat is indeed extremely strange. He is merely a 5-star Do Sheng, yet he is able to unleash such a frightening attack. A cold glint flashed within Han Yang's eyes. He suddenly slammed his palm onto the body of the Northern King. The sudden increase in his strength directly caused the chest of the Northern King to sink a little. If it was not because it was a puppet, this palm would have already taken his life. Even though this was the case, that ferocious palm wind still caused the Northern King to fly back by 1,000 feet. After which, Han Yang's body moved and directly pounced onto Xiao Yang. Stop him. Yaro Laro's expression changed upon seeing this. He let out a cold cry and a do qi pillar shot out. However, such an attack was completely ignored by Han Yang. It was scattered with the wave of his sleeve. Red poison palm. Old man Shen Nong had a grave expression after seeing that the obstruction was futile. His body rushed forward and his hand swiftly swelled. It also turned bright red in color. An unusual phenomenon was vaguely emitted from it as it smashed towards Han Yang. Humph. Faced with old man Shen Nong, Han Yang could only let out a cold snort. He flipped and lifted his hand. Those 5 fingers became charred black. He randomly slammed his hand forward and collided with the bright red palm wind of old man Shen Nong. The collision between the two emitted an unusual fragrance. Immediately, old man Shen Nong's expression paled. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. His body also miserably fly backwards. Clearly, he had suffered a big loss upon contact. A group of little shrimps actually dares to try and escape from the hands of my Han clan. In your dreams. Han Yang laughed coldly after he defeated old man Shen Nong with a strike from his palm. His body flashed and he appeared in front of Xiao Yang. His black fingers were just like the fingers of a death god as they grabbed towards Xiao Yang with lightning-like speed. Xiao Yang's eyes stared intently at Hun Yang's claw wind. The latter would land on his body in an instant. The sharp wind easily tore through the Doqi defense on Xiao Yang's body, after which, it heavily landed on his body. The black fingers cut across, bringing with it some blood and sparks. The clothes in front of Xiao Yang's chest had directly turned into dust. A layer of tough dragon scale covered his body. However, 5 deep wounds had already appeared on the dragon scale at this moment. Fresh blood continued to flow out from his wound. If it was not because of the protection from the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor, it was likely that Xiao Yang's stomach would have been torn apart by this strike. Xiao Yang's face turned pale after suffering this heavy blow. Hun Yang's claw wind had directly sent him flying backwards. However, an icy cold smile flashed across Xiao Yang's eyes as he flew backwards. His mouth widened slightly, explode. Hun Yang's eyes suddenly shrunk after the soft voice was emitted. His sight stilled at the spot a couple of centimeters from him. There was a palm-sized fire lotus slowly rotating there. A brilliant 8-colored fire lotus was rotating at that spot. It appeared incomparably beautiful. Hun Yang's expression changed drastically as he looked at the fire lotus, which was in close proximity. Before he could react, however, a bright luster had erupted from within the fire lotus. Countless of light pillar containing an extermination force erupted. They shot out from the fire lotus in a densely packed manner. Any person struck by the fire lotus would be turned into ashes almost immediately. From the looks of it, it was fortunate that Xiao Yang had borrowed Hun Yang's strength and flew backwards. Otherwise, it was likely that he would be shot by these extermination light pillars. Hun Yang was the first to be struck. His body was penetrated by many light pillars. However, it did not turn into dust at this moment. Monstrous Doqi continued to surge from within his body as it tried its best to block the erosion of the extermination force. However, the fire lotus, which had been merged from 8 types of heavenly flames, was not simple. An extermination like fire lotus was emitted from within the fire lotus after the light pillar shot out. The bright light in the sky appeared just like a bright sun. Intense piercing light had basically covered the entire Yaro realm. Bang! An indescribable extermination-like force swept in all directions across the sky. The mountain range below, which was already full of holes, had turned into a red ground. The terrifyingly high temperature had melted the entire mountain range. Xiao Yang grabbed Yaro and the others. Their bodies flew backwards as the purifying demonic lotus flame formed a huge fire barrier in front of them. Only then did the group avoided getting implicated by the attack. The extermination force lasted for quite a long time before it gradually faded. A black smoke fell from the middle. Finally, it violently landed below, smashing the ground and forming a 10,000 feet large pit. Xiao Yang's eyes looked into the distance. He could vaguely see Hun Yang within it. The latter was wrapped in a black vapor. However, his aura had become a lot weaker than before. Clearly, he had at the very least been seriously injured. Old man Shen Nong by the side inhaled a breath of cold air. His eyes were filled with shock as he watched this scene. It was difficult for him to imagine that Xiao Yang was actually able to force an advanced 7-star Do Sheng until such an extent. Hurry and leave. The space at that spot had already been torn apart by the remnant force. Xiao Yang's face was pale. The piercing pain transmitted from his chest caused his body to tremble. He swung his hand and tossed the life spirit flame and turtle spiritual earth flame towards Old Man Shen Nong and Yaro Tian as he cried out in an anxious voice. His current condition was also extremely terrible. An 8-colored fire lotus exhaustion was far more terrifying as compared to what he had imagined. Even his current self could only use it once. However, he would end up being unusually weak. A weakened person had almost no chance of surviving in this situation with danger lurking all around. Only after hearing Xiao Yang's words did everyone realize that the middle ripples from the extermination force had actually been torn apart, forming a spatial crack line that was a couple of dozen feet in size. They immediately braced their attention. Quick! Xiao Yang took out a jade bottle from his storage ring. He randomly poured the medicinal liquid inside onto the injuries on his chest and once again urged. Taking the lead, he extended the bone wings on his back and rushed into the spatial crack with lightning-like speed. Now was the best opportunity to escape. Stop them! Hun Yang's body swayed as he rose from the ground. His expression was ferocious as he roared. It was unexpected that even with his strength, he had actually been forced into such a miserable state by Xiao Yang. All the remaining experts from the Yaro clan actually began to crazily self-destruct after seemingly having sensed that there was hope for Xiao Yang's group to escape. The waves from the explosions completely blocked those experts from the Hun clan, who wanted to free themselves to stop Xiao Yang's group. Hun Jing, who was exchanging blows with Yaro Dan, had a gloomy face upon seeing this scene. Unexpectedly, that brat was even able to force back Hun Yang. However, Yaro Dan appeared to be aware of his intentions just as he was planning to free himself to block the group. A crazy and ferocious smile surfaced on Yaro Dan's face. After which, The do chi within his body suddenly became wild and violent. Xiao Yang, thank you very much. Yaro Dan turned his head as the do chi within his body reached the limit of its untamed violence. He looked at Xiao Yang, who had grabbed Yaro Tian, Yaro Ling and the rest as he entered the spatial crack. Those crazy scarlet eyes of Yaro Dan revealed a smile that seemed to have been relieved of a great burden. After which, an extermination explosion that was not weaker than the 8-colored fire lotus explosion from earlier once again resounded within this blood-covered realm. The frightening extermination storm swept apart within the Yaro realm. Other than a small number of extremely powerful individuals, most of those who were struck by it were turned into ashes in an instant. The might from the self-destruction of a 7-star Do Sheng could really annihilate the world. This old lunatic. Faced with this extermination storm that spread across the place, those experts from the Hall of Soul, who were originally planning on stopping Xiao Yang's group, had no choice but to quickly withdraw. Even someone as strong as Hun Jing and Hun Yang could only step back and stay low at this moment. The storm continued for a couple of minutes before it gradually weakened. After the extermination ripples disappeared, 100,000 feet large hole appeared on the ground below. The bottom of the hole was completely black. It was as though one could not see the bottom. Such a frightening destructive force caused the eyes of Hun Yang and the others to shrink slightly. Hun Jing's and Hun Yang's eyes immediately turned towards the direction which Xiao Yang's group had fled towards as the storm scattered. However, they merely saw a spatial crack that was slowly being repaired. Xiao Yang and the others had already vanished. Clearly, they had fled from the spatial crack. Damn it. Hun Jing's expression was gloomy upon seeing this scene. He let out a soft curse and suddenly grabbed towards the spot where Yaro Dan had self-destructed. Immediately, a glow flew over. Finally, it turned into an ancient jade that appeared in his palm. From its appearance, it was something similar to that Tushan ancient god jade in Xiao Yang's hand. It seemed that this was the ancient jade that belonged to the Yaro clan. Why have you let that brat flee? Hun Hu's figure also appeared beside Hun Jing as he spoke with a sunken expression. Elder Wanhua and the rest had already been completely killed at this moment. The former did not have much ability to resist in front of a 7-star Do Sheng. Hun Jing held the ancient jade. He lifted his eyelid and looked at the extremely miserable Hun Yang who had headed over. At this moment, green and white intertwined on his face. He did not expect that he had actually been turned into such a miserable state by Xiao Yang even after attacking personally. This brat does indeed have some ability. No wonder he is able to cause our Hun clan to suffer losses time and time again. Hun Yang's eyes were gloomy. However, he did not shrink from his responsibility. The destructive force that Xiao Yang had unleashed earlier was something that even an ordinary 7-star Do Sheng would not be able to produce. Moreover, from the information that they had obtained, Xiao Yang did not possess such a fighting ability. There was nothing to laugh about him suffering such a loss. We must not allow them to flee successfully. Although we are now no longer afraid of the Jiyu clan learning of this news, that brat does possess a Tushi ancient god jade in his hand. We will be able to save a lot of trouble in the future if we obtain it. Hun Huzi said. He had been played by Xiao Yang while he was refining pill earlier. Now, it was only natural that he did not wish to see the latter escape. We should resolve the matter of the Yaro clan first. Our mission is to collect the bloodline strength of the Yaro clan. As for Xiao Yang's group, Humph, how can it be so easy for them to escape? There are still Hun Sha and Hun Tu outside of the Yaro clan's realm. Send the news to them. Ask them to dispatch one of them to kill Xiao Yang. Hun Yang spoke coldly. If it is not because the both of them needs to help Nihility Sir to stabilize the spatial seal, it would be impossible for that brat to tear open a spatial crack and flee. Aye. Hun Jing also nodded. He glanced at this realm, which was filled with a bloody stench. A cruel smile involuntarily flashed across his eyes as he spoke in a dense voice. With this bloodline strength from the Yaro clan, it will be able to extend our Hun clan for another 1,000 years. At that time, once our plan succeeds, the clan head will become the first person in thousands of years to step into the Do Di class. At that time, the entire Do Chi continent would be under the rule of our Hun clan. Even the Jiyu clan can only grovel at our feet. Originally, this day would have come much earlier. In the end, it was hindered by the Xiao clan. Back then, our attack on the Xiao clan had caused our clan to suffer quite a serious loss. We have only recovered until our peak after recuperating for so many years. Otherwise, we would not need to be overly afraid of the Jiyu clan. Hun Hu's tone was ferocious as he said. Everything is worth it to eliminate the Xiao clan. That clan is far too difficult to deal with. If they were to join hands with the Jiyu clan in the future, it might really be possible for them to threaten our Hun clan. We must eliminate them. Moreover, that Xiao Shen, even our clan head at his peak is afraid of him. We must not allow such an enemy to remain. Hun Jing spoke in a deep voice. A frightened expression flashed across his eyes when he mentioned that name. It was as though he had recalled the earth-shaking miserable battle back then. Hun Yang took out a medicinal pill and swallowed it. His eyes were dark and cold as he looked at the lingering battles still present below. He involuntarily let out a dark and cold smile. Start collecting the bloodline strength. With these bloodline, the clan head might be able to advance another level. At that time, our Hun clan will launch an all-out attack. The space hundreds of kilometers away from the Shunnong mountain range suddenly became distorted. A spatial crack line appeared. Immediately, many miserable-looking figures continued to rush out from it. Everyone only heaved a sigh of relief after landing on the mountain. They had finally escaped from the prison where they would have to die. Are you all right? Yaro wiped off his cold sweat. Being able to escape from the realm sealed by the Hun clan was considered a miracle. However, he quickly turned his eyes towards Xiao Yang. His expression changed slightly after seeing the injury on the latter's chest. I'm all right. Xiao Yang clenched his teeth. His hand rubbed over his wound. Wisps of pink flame entered his injuries. Immediately, white smoke was emitted. Traces of black vapor was being forced out from the wound by the purifying demonic lotus flame. Xiao Yang finally sighed in relief after resolving the eroding qi present within his injury. He stuffed a medicinal pill into his mouth and recuperated for a moment. Only then did he turn his head and looked at the unusually quiet mountain range behind him. No one could have imagined that the realm within this mountain range had already turned into a complete bloodbath with corpses lying all over it. Besides Xiao Yang, those dozen over younger generation of the Yaro clan, whom Xiao Yang had rescued from the Yaro realm, were kneeling towards the mountain range with expressions that were full of grief. A couple of ladies amongst them had involuntarily cried. Having been constantly living under the protection of the Yaro clan all their lives, they had never felt so helpless and hopeless before. Compared to the others, Yaro Tian and Yaro Ling were a little calmer. Although there was still an endless despair within their eyes, they did not display it on their face. The both of them had matured greatly after experiencing this great change. Mr. Xiao Yang, there is nothing that we can do to repay this great favor of yours. If there is a change in the future, the Yaro clan will definitely repay you with our lives. Yaro Tian turned around, cupped his hands tightly towards Xiao Yang and spoke in a deep voice. Beside him, Yaro Ling had also gathered her pretty eyes onto Xiao Yang and bowed slightly. All of you should continue living. There is no need to repay anything. If it is not because those elders from the Yaro clan had sacrificed their lives to fight, no one would be able to escape. Xiao Yang waved his hand. His heart also felt some pity towards the misfortune that had befell Yaro Tian's group. From today onwards, Yaro Tian was no longer the brightest star of the Yaro clan. The latter would be just like him and needed to rely on his own strength. Whether Yaro Tian could revive the clan would determine on his own ability. What should we do next? Yaro sighed and asked. The Hun clan is far too brutal. There are many chiefs and elders from the various sects on the Central Plains who had been killed by them this time around. If news of this spread, the Hun clan will definitely become the common enemy of everyone. However, these factions are just like ants from the perspective of the Hun clan and they will have difficulty catching its attention. Xiao Yang revealed an expression of deep thought. A moment later, he said, we must head to the Jiyu clan. Currently, the only one able to fight with the Hun clan is the Jiyu clan. They will definitely not stand idly and watch after such a thing had happened. At that time, only by combining with the Yang and Lei clan will it be possible to restrain the Hun clan. Otherwise, the other ancient clans will also have difficulty escaping this great calamity. From the way the Hun clan was able to easily eliminate the Yaro clan, even the Yang and Lei clan would likely end up with the same fate. Of course, the Sky Mansion Alliance would likely end up with an even more miserable fate. In terms of foundation, the alliance still had some gap when compared with these ancient clans. Xiao Yang had never believed that the Hun clan would let the Sky Mansion Alliance off. Hence, he must think of a solution as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the Hun clan attacks the alliance, the result would not be any better than the scene today. Teacher, you should first return to the alliance and make arrangement. Raise the defense level to its highest. Those that need to be shifted should proceed secretly. Tell everyone to be cautious. Yaro hesitated upon hearing this. Finally, he nodded. Given his strength, he would not be able to provide Xiao Yang with much of a help by following the latter. Instead, he would only be a burden. The Shunnong mountain range is not longer safe. I shall accompany you to the Sky Mansion Alliance. I heard that that old demon from the Pill Tower is also there. It has been many years since I have seen him. I really wish to meet him. Old man Shunnong hesitated for a moment before speaking. The Hun clan was also targeting him. If he continued to remain alone, he would really be unlucky if the Hun clan was to discover his trail. Xiao Yang was also startled upon hearing these words. He immediately rejoiced. This old man Shunnong was not only a 6-star Do Sheng but his alchemist skills was something that few could match. If he could stay at the alliance, the strength of the alliance would soar greatly. Xiao Yang was naturally happy to see such a situation. Yaro Tian, both you and your sister should head with me to the Jiyu clan. The both of you will need to explain the matter of the Yaro clan in order for those elders from the Jiyu clan to believe. The remaining people should head to the Sky Mansion Alliance first. What do you say? Xiao Yang looked towards Yaro Tian and Yaro Ling and asked. We will listen to Mr. Xiao Yang's orders. Yaro Tian and Yaro Ling exchanged glances before nodding their heads. Although Xiao Yang was not very old, they clearly understood in their hearts that there was indeed an extremely great gap between them and Xiao Yang. In that case, let's get going. Xiao Yang sighed softly. His internal injuries had been significantly recovered during this short period of time. His voice had just sounded when his expression suddenly changed. He turned his head abruptly and looked at a mountain a short distance away. There was a figure carrying a huge dark red ghost blade on his shoulder leaning on a huge tree. Those savage red eyes appeared just like a bloody sea. Have I been discovered? A ferocious smile rose on that figure's face after he detected Xiao Yang's gaze. An evil aura suddenly soared. This video will end here.